Hey guys, so this week I have been running into quite a few people with questions as to what's happening with the market, inflation, interest rates, so on and so forth. And there's a lot of misconception as to how all of that works. So, as many of you heard, the Canada benchmark rate was increased by 0.25% a few days ago, again to combat inflation. And one question I had recently was, why is the Bank of Canada increasing rates? Like, are they trying to control the housing market? And that is not the case. That's not why the rates have been increasing. So what you have to understand is that the Bank of Canada's main job is to keep inflation in check. So inflation is pretty much as to how expensive certain things get year over year. And their target is usually between 2 to 3%. So if we rewind back to when it was COVID, people were losing jobs, people weren't outside buying things, and the Bank of Canada lowered rates to stimulate the economy, to get people to start spending, to get inflation back up, because the entire world was pretty much shut down. So that's why there were lower interest rates, and that's why you would have seen people spend, people able to, do the renovations, go on vacation and start spending, because money was very cheap to borrow at that time. Now, unfortunately, the Bank of Canada took a back seat and inflation pretty much got out of control in the later half of 2021, where the inflation rates were over 7% or so. So that's why in 2022 they started to slowly increase rates. So it's rates and inflation is pretty much like a seesaw, where if the rates are low, inflation tends to go on an upward trend, and vice versa. If the rates are high, inflation is supposed to slow down. Now, unfortunately, with rate increases, it does indirectly or directly affect the housing market and prices, because now it's more expensive for people to borrow. Which is why we would have saw the shift last year in the real estate market. So inflation got out of hand. Bank of Canada was a little bit too late in terms of increasing rates, in my opinion. And that's why they're continuing to increase rates, even though inflation is slowly starting to come down. I think we're about somewhere in the 6% right now. And they're going to keep monitoring the market till they get to the 2 to 3% range. Now, increasing rates and how it affects inflation doesn't happen over time. Unfortunately, there isn't a certain time frame that I can tell you. It doesn't happen overnight. It can take months, it could take years till things get back to normal. So obviously, with increasing rates, it affects the variable rate mortgages the most, and it could affect the fixed rate mortgages, right? So obviously you see online that rates are going up, but you got to also understand that there's two type of rates that you can get in terms of a mortgage: a variable or a fixed. So as the Bank of Canada continues to increase rates, variable rate mortgages usually have been going up. But on the interesting side, fixed rates have actually been coming down. So in December, one of my clients got 5.5% as a 2-year fixed. And since then, I touched base with a mortgage broker a few days ago. Rates went down to 5%, and now he's saying that the best rate he has seen this week is around 4.8%. So you can still buy a home and get a mortgage rate at lower than 5%. Obviously, nothing amazing to the 2 or 3% that we have seen in the years before. Now, me personally, I have had a variable rate mortgage since 2015. And in the earlier years, I have seen rates go up by 0.25% at a time, and I have seen rates go down 0.25% at a time. Again, depending on how the economy was doing at that time, and the time that we live in right now, where we have seen 8 rate hikes, is it's just one of those times that is rare, and unfortunately we're going through it right now because of all the stuff that we have gone through during COVID. Now, what's happening in the real estate market is, what I'm seeing the past few days and weeks is that buyers are understanding that you're saving 30-40% or so in some cases and in some markets off the purchase price, and they're seeing that interest rates are a short-term problem, and they're confident that rates will go down to normal levels. So you might have seen my story posts and stuff like that, where some properties are still getting 20-30 offers, and if you look in that area, there's probably 2 to 10 houses available for 20 to 30 people. So if you are looking to buy, I would say definitely look at the numbers first to see what you qualify for, and if you're able to manage the payment, because essentially what you're buying is not a purchase price, you're buying a monthly payment, because the last thing I would want is, when you are ready to enter the market, that you are going to be overwhelmed with the number of competition. And there's always the misconception that realtors are trying to get people to buy, and there's no reason for me to try to scare the people that follow me in terms of the number of offers, prices, and stuff like that. It's just my job as a realtor to show you what's going on in the market. And obviously the decision is up to you as to if you want to proceed or not. So there are still great deals to be found. The demand is back if you were trying to time the bottom, because even if you're trying to time the bottom, there are 20 to 30 people just like you who might have a stronger financial qualification than you, more down payment, so on and so forth, to have that competitive edge over you. But just like in a hot market, in a cold market, you just have to keep trying, and the right one will eventually work out. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is pre-construction. Again, pre-construction could work depending on what your financial situation is. I'm still seeing that pre-construction is still a little bit more on the higher side than what you can find in a resale market. But obviously it comes down to your financial situation, right? So there was a person I ran into, they bought a pre-construction, and I'm like, why did you buy this property? You could have got it for $100,000 cheaper in the resale market. And he is like, hey, Kokilan, I only had 10% down, so this was a way for me to secure a property, and it gives me a year or so to come up with the rest of the 10%, which is great. But if you're able to qualify with the amount that you have now, or if you have the 20%, then definitely I would go towards the resale route, because I feel like there are better options and better price points compared to pre-construction. And right now with pre-construction, it's not always about the price. The builders are really showcasing the benefit of a lower deposit structure, which is very intriguing to people trying to get into the market. So to see what works, see where you can get the best deal. And again, if I was in your shoes and if I'm able to qualify now, I would go the resale route, just so I could benefit from that built-in equity in terms of buying it a little bit cheaper, and by paying down the mortgage today rather than a year or two from now. So if you have any questions about the real estate market, financing, inflation, so on and so forth, feel free to shoot me a DM, and I will love talking to you. Bye for now.